Blessings. Welcome to the Navigating Eternity workshop. I'm here with my co host, Brother Rob, and,
Blessings, family. Blessings.
and the EJ Kadi African Martial Arts family. So I'm glad to be here today with y'all. I hope everyone is having a beautiful start to their spring. If you have noticed, today our stream is all about natural energy management. So, in the title, it says natural time management, which is energy management, accountability, and planning. So that's what Navigating Eternity is all about. But beyond that, it is a really an initiation process into a revolutionary ideology that we call Tehuti Ma'at. So if it's your first time here, I want to welcome you to Tehuti Ma'at. Our instrument, we call it a revolutionary instrument, is here and designed for the liberation of people of African ascent worldwide in this current African world revolution that we are experiencing. It is a instrument that's really designed for anyone who's here to embody these principles. So Tehuti, which we'll talk about a bit more as we get deeper into today's stream, is wisdom in a Akari shell, right? Just to summarize it. And Ma'at is truth. So if you are here because something pulled you in, just trust that there's something that's here for you. And really, it is the essence of these cosmic principles of wisdom and truth that are really guiding the way for this revolution. And this revolution is all about internal revolution, right? And us recognizing that we are the revolution. And in order for us to experience the transformation that we want to see, we have to embody it, right? So we want to align with nature. And that's what this medicine of navigating eternity is all about. I'm going to pass the mic to my brother Rob just to give his own introduction and welcome in his family that's tuning in from
Yes,
Ijekari.
yes. So, peace and blessings, fam. Of course, those that know me on each Kari African Martial Arts, Brother Rob here. And so, when Sister Neff mentioned to me that she was doing another webinar for Navigating Eternity, I said, "Yo, sis, like, hook a brother up. We gotta live stream this also on my channel because." There would be no Ijikadi African martial arts as far as where I am and what we're doing on our channel without this medicine, without this instrument, without Tahuti Ma'at and Navigating Eternity. And, I've mentioned this many, many times before, but I wanted to take this opportunity and share this, full webinar with you all here live on YouTube. So I'm super excited to get started.
Every time I hear you say that, Rob, I'm just like proud. I am just so very proud and grateful because I think one of the things that's important for people to know about what Navigating Eternity is here for
Mhm.
is that it's when I say Tehutima is an instrument, we feel like that's a better way to describe it than an organization because it's designed for anyone to embody these principles of revolution in the way that we see it and play the song of their purpose. So it's beautiful that for you, coming into your own cultural renaissance and your own spiritual resurrection, that you would birth Ijakari. And I really would love for you to just give an introduction to yourself, also for people who are tuning in on this side who may
Yes.
not be familiar with you, so that they know like what your background is and what exactly you've birthed through your experience navigating eternity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. So I actually first came across this medicine, this instrument. I don't even know how long, maybe it was 3 years ago, somewhere around there. I feel like I came in through through brother Omawale Africa and the African War College, and the merging of the two with becoming the Amos Wilson Collective. And so, for those that don't know that a little bit about that background, but that's how I was introduced to Hudi Ma'at and Navigating Eternity. And for me, growing up, I kind of grew up with like Christian background, very religious upbringing, and which is cool, which was really good and beneficial for me. But at the same time, like I was very much, culturally unaware of, my own, ancestry and ancestral traditions and culture, right? Because really culture is identity. Culture is who we are and who we've always been historically, and who we continue to be in present day, although many of us are not aware or conscious of that. And so for me, it was about, restoring or restoring or remembering who my ancestry was, right? And where we come from, and reconnecting to that, because, we've all kind of gone through different various traumas in our life, particularly people of African descent, right? Historical trauma, generational trauma. And a lot of that persists and continues to this day. And just in my own struggles to try to navigate my own pain and the only things I was going through emotionally, like, this has been the only thing that I personally have found that has helped. Looks like I don't know what's going on with the camera here, but
That fireworks.
is it fireworks? Is that what it is? I was like, what is going on? I didn't know. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm not tech savvy. Okay, for those that, you got to forgive me. All right, but that's really what drew me to Hudi Ma'at, and really the biggest aspect of it. And we'll kind of get into it a little bit as we go along. But it's been that aspect of community, and so, so from that, and I've been a martial artist pretty much all my life, right? And I've done various forms of martial arts, mainly Asian martial arts, but I wanted to do something that was really culturally relevant to me as a person of African descent, and also pass that on to future generations. And so that's what I've been doing locally within my own community, but also online here on through YouTube and other means, other vehicles, Zoom classes and stuff like that. But really, that's a little bit about my background, and kind of my little bit of my story. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Brother Rob. And I'll be introducing myself a little bit more. It's like kind of built into the webinar. So for people who are tuning in who aren't familiar with
Mm-hmm.
me, I'll share a little bit more about myself. But I am the mother of Tehuti Ma'at. I'm very proud of this vision that's been given to me to bring forward not only this medicine, but many, many different healing medicines. So I am a healing artist, right? I create many different systems that I like to call medicines that are here for spiritual and psychological um, healing, particularly for those of us of African descent. So I really, really appreciate everyone who's taken their energy to be here and be present in this moment. And one of the things that we always do before we get started in any of the practices that we do is really make sure that we're present, because navigating eternity, right, it's an energy management medicine that's disseminated or distributed as an online course, but the main essence of the medicine is the accountability community, which we call the JED, right? The JED is the backbone, it's the pillar, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, that is the space where you get to actually be witnessed as you're navigating eternity, because ultimately we're all navigating eternity, but unconsciously. So
Yeah.
what happens with this medicine is you get to become conscious of the
Yeah.
natural rhythm and the natural pulse, whether that be through our solar system and or just other cosmic forces that have influence on our energy on the planet. And as we begin to be conscious of them, we can synchronize and be more in harmony with the natural frequency and flow, right? So that is essentially what we're going to do in this moment. We're going to be present, because navigating eternity is to help us be present in our lives and in our experience. And we're going to take a moment to just take a few deep breaths. It's going to be that simple today, right? We're going to take a few clearing breaths, but these are going to be alternating nostril breaths, mainly because we've just moved through a retrograde that was affecting the energy or the force of Tehuti, which is the energy of the mind, a lot of mental stimulation. These retrograde energies are typically happen every season, and they give us a chance to really integrate mentally all of the growth and things that we've been experiencing and processing on multiple dimensions in our physical world, the experiences and things that are happening, spiritually, the things that we can't even grasp and perceive. But our mind has the opportunity to really integrate those things and allow itself to reflect. And sometimes, if we're not conscious of that, we might go against the current. So we may try to push things forward when the energy is really trying to bring us back into reflection to make sure we don't miss anything. So that energy, which we know as Mercury from the Roman interpretation, just stationed direct today, which means that optical illusion from our planet has completed itself, but those energies are still lingering. It can affect sometimes our technology, our ways of thinking. So sometimes the central nervous system can be overstimulated. So this alternating nostril breathing technique is very powerful. It balances both our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, and it's very simple and easy. All I'm inviting you to do is to alternate between your left and your right nostril. So I'm going to invite you right now to take your right thumb and place it over your right nostril. And we're going to inhale on the left nostril and exhale in the left nostril. Now I want you to take that index finger and place it on your left nostril. And now we're going to inhale into the right nostril and exhale out of the right nostril. Switch back to the left. Inhale. Fill that belly up like a balloon as you're inhaling, taking deep breaths in, and exhale out the same nostril. Just contract that belly back in. Switch. Inhaling on the left, on the right, and exhaling on the right. Switch. This is our last round. I want you to inhale and exhale. And on the right side, final one, inhale. And exhale. You can release and just inhale through both nostrils. You should feel a difference here. You can also take note if you felt a difference between your left and your right side, noticing that there's a need for balance there, right? Sometimes you could be stuffed on one side, and um, these are all things that allow us to take notice, right? Our left side is associated with our feminine energy, or our receptive energy, and our right side is associated with our masculine energy or our active energy, right? So these are like some of the little simple medicines that we offer as ways that which we hope that you integrate into your day-to-day life. If you ever feel overwhelmed, or if you feel like you're having experiencing anxiety or panic in any way, this is a great way to allow your nervous system to balance itself. And you can continue to go, right? You can do, 11 breaths. You can do as many as you want until you feel balanced. So, welcome again. We're going to go ahead and get started on navigating eternity. So, I did share a little bit about um, what the medicine is, but I would love to just share briefly about the inception of this medicine. So the photo on your screen here is actually me 10 years ago, actually 11 years now, when I first came back home here to Cabo Verde, which is the land of my foremothers and my forefathers. I was not born here, but my first time returning to this particular island, where both of my parents were born, I had a spiritual awakening, to say the least. And it was really the land that awakened me. It was my experience of coming back, experiencing my father farming, and just like it awakened something within my genetic memory, even the foods, whatever, all of the different aspects of the nature here stimulated something so profound in me that I never was the same. After being here for a year, and having like just a jolting into not only just the beauty of the land here and nature and just the experience of being back in Africa. Cabo Verde is on the west coast of Africa, so that is where I am located. And it was a really beautiful experience, but it was also really jolting because it woke me up to the reality of the depravity as well, and just the reality of everything that I was kind of numb to prior to that. So from that moment on, it was definitely uphill transformation, right? There was a lot of things that I had to release and process. But in that process and in the inception of that awakening, I was awakened back into my inner child. And this aspect that was really woven into me from my childhood to organize. I used to love to play office, and in the space that I had to like step outside of the rat race after living in New York for 9 years, I was able to actually sit back and be present with life. And in that space, I wanted to design a planner. I was calling it the perfect planner at the time. And that planner design that I was working on, I never would have imagined would have become what it is today, which is this medicine that we're going to introduce to you here today, which is navigating eternity. Right. So from that point, I decided to actually move back here years later, right after going back to New York, starting Tehuti Ma'at, initiating one of our first programs, Organic Food for the People, which is all about returning people back to the land, teaching people how to grow their own food, how to use our food as medicine, how to return back to our natural methods of healing, and also how to recognize that our relationship to the planet is essential for the transformation that's taking place on the planet right now. The planet is healing itself, and we are part of that process. And by connecting with nature, I was able to return myself back to the natural pulse of nature and receive all of the divine communication that was coming through all of these different forces that I was experiencing in farming. And that essence is what has allowed me to literally transform my life. And after 8 years of consciously observing that process and creating a system and a method for an intrinsic system that we just have to remember, right? Because we're coming out of a degenerate cycle, right? A low point where everything is inverted, essentially, right? When we think about our legacy as African people on the planet, we have gone through so many different cycles. African people have been on the planet traversing this earth for millennia. And in those millions of years in alignment and connection with nature, we then experienced an interruption within that process, which brought us into a degenerate cycle, which is what I'm referring to, which is the enslavement of our ancestors and the current enslavement in many ways that we are still enslaved. But there's an awakening that's happening right now because we've been called back into our time. And one of the reasons why I love to share this medicine is because in 2020, right, which we like to call year zero, there was an initiation process that happened. Specifically, I was guided back to Kemet, right, to modern day Egypt, to initiate us back into our time. That's the best way that I can put it. At the moment, I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into. I just know I needed to go. I told my partner at the time, I was like, we have to go to Kenya. I had never been there in this life. And I was just like, we have to go and we have to get there before January 1st. And so that was 2019. And I just remember feeling that very clearly in my heart. And when I expressed that to my partner, he was like, okay, well, I don't know how we're going to make it happen, but let's figure it out. And lo and behold, I was at the Great Pyramid, the Great Merkuti, all three of them, in Kemet in year zero. And I was guided to do a ritual inside of the Great Merkut, or the Great Pyramid in Giza, modern day Giza. And opened the way for a new beginning for us. And at that point, I would have never imagined that COVID would happen and all these other things were going to unfold. And I ended up back here in Cabo Verde, and everything shut down. And that's when this initiation process really took place, where I was guided to take the wisdom that I had received from all of the ways that my genetic memory opened up in Kemet to bring this medicine to life. So this medicine was being nurtured for 8 years before it before it became public. So it's interesting that you mentioned Brother Omawali, because Brother Omawali was part of one of the beta JEDs before the JEDs even became public. So before our accountability community became public, Brother Omawali, who our brother Rob just mentioned, was a part of that process. So since then, there's been so much awakening. Like, I have literally been living my dreams in alignment with everything that is in my heart to do. And that's what this medicine was designed for. I felt like I was constantly being pressured to, no, you need to focus on one thing. And I'm already like super unconventional in my life practice, but there's just something in me that has so many different visions and dreams. And I finally found the method that all of those things could be birthed, not at the same time, but learning how nature allows us to activate all of those different spaces. And the key to that was really shifting out of time and this linear time paradigm that we're in and into eternity. So, one of the things that we start with this medicine is recognizing that time is movement, right? Because that is the initial way that all indigenous traditions have related to time, not as a value system, but as a metric, as a way to measure our movement, right? The first sundials, right, are the first expressions of how we were able to measure time, because we were measuring our movement and our revolution, right? The movement
Mhm.
of our planet in our solar system. So, one of the things that I think is really important is to recognize that we have a paradigm right now that is pulling us in two different directions, right? On one side, we have the super material world driven narrative, which is all about, time is money, right? So time is our value, right? Our labor. We think about when we even think about capitalism, and we think about our ancestors being the first capital in their labor, literally
Yeah.
their energy
Yeah.
being what the value metric was. And on the opposite side, we have this kind of new age movement that's very ungrounded and really more so in the ethereal space. And it's like, no, time is an illusion, time is not real. And what if I told you both of those things are true, right? Yes, our energy is valuable, and time is somewhat of an illusion. However, at the center of it, the purpose of time in this realm, in this dimension, in this physical world, is to give us a rhythm and a pulse. And that rhythm and pulse is gauged based off of our relationship to Ra, which is our sun, right? So, before I even continue on, I actually want to ask you, Brother Rob, how is it that this idea in itself has impacted you and your relationship to, not, I guess, life, and
Yeah.
how you move?
Yeah, no, thank you, sis, for that question. So this was actually a really difficult concept for me to get because I'm just so like time centric and oriented the way I process things, right? Because I'm always like, okay, what's the next thing I got to get done, right? And so to really sit down and understand this concept that it's not about time, right, quote unquote time, but movement in the sense of how are we moving, where are we putting our focus and our energy towards. And so I really had to intuitively sit with that concept for a little while to really kind of grasp it. And so for me, it kind of comes down to this, right? We are always moving, right? We're always moving whether we want to or not. We're always moving. Time, quote unquote, time doesn't stop, right? Time is actually moving as well, right? Everything is subject to movement, okay? Everything is moving all the time. Even if we just sit in one spot, we're still moving. The cells in our body are still active and moving. We're breathing, right? We're still doing something. Nothing is just still unless it's dead, right? And so we're always in motion. And so now it's just being conscious of, well, where do I want to direct my motion? Because regardless, I'm going to be moving regardless, right? And so now it's just how do I take that movement and direct it towards something that I feel will, empower, enlighten, edify, that I feel a sense of purpose from, right? And I'm very much intentional about my movement as opposed to unintentional. And that was the shift for me.
The intentionality, which
Yeah.
is interesting too. I do find that a lot of the brothers who come into navigating eternity, and this isn't just to be like a generalization, but there is a reality to the differences and the distinctions between the nature of male and female.
Mhm.
And I do find that um, it it becomes a very healing thing for the males in particular, because of, in some sense the socialization, in some senses programming, but also there's also just the nature of us shifting into a more receptive state or
Mhm.
intuitive state on the planet as well, right? We've gone through this cycle where we moved into a hyper um, male driven expression, where it has been all about action. And like, even when we think about the way that we've been oriented into time management, right, it's very much about productivity, right? And we're
Yeah.
not products.
Yeah.
We are living, breathing beings, and whether we're male or female, we have both active and receptive components, just like our breath, right? We have to inhale and exhale. So there's that natural balance that's expressed in nature, that I find that this has been very supportive for the brothers in particular, around just
Mhm.
like kind of surrendering beyond the aspects of time that are more, we're able to like control and govern, and more receptive to, the aspects of life that you really can't control,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I appreciate you sharing your perspective on that.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, so this brings us to the core of this medicine, which is it's a solar orienting medicine. It's about us as African people remembering and reclaiming, retrieving our solar consciousness, right? We are on a solar powered planet, right? This is a planet that is literally infused with the creative force of this solar energy, right? And the warmth of the sun and its radiant power is what energizes everything, electrifies everything on the planet. As Brother Rob said, it's all about movement. But there's this beautiful divine design, right? Regardless of what your orientation is to it, right? The divine, right? Like these are God's planets, right? There's a reason why everything was created in this way, and there's an order, and they move at different speeds and in different shapes, and all of that is relevant. And the more that we're able to connect with that and recognize that it means something to us, the more that we're able to create a life that flows with ease instead of swimming against the current. So when we think about the sun at the center of our solar system, one of the key things that's important for us to think about, especially with navigating eternity, where we've just entered into a new year, technically, through this medicine, we calculate the new year to begin at the first new moon after the spring equinox, or it could be the autumn equinox, depending on where you are on the planet, right? So every time that we move, every revolution, right, every year, right, we are experiencing a pulse that is dictated or governed by the sun. And what happens is, as the sun moves in our sky, where I'm based, actually, I'm at the foothills. I'm in Ma'at Mountain. And the reason why it's Ma'at Mountain is that mountain literally centers the solstices at the southernmost and northernmost point of the huge mountain that is the backdrop of this island. And at the center, when the sun rises at the center, like right now, it rises directly in the center when it's at the equinox. So what happens is, when the sun is furthest south, we are experiencing the longest, well, depending on where you are, as I said, the longest day and the shortest night. And once it gets to that furthest point, it doesn't go any further. It starts to return back to the north. So what begins to happen is the days begin to lengthen and the nights begin to shorten until we get back to balance, equal daylight and equal night. And then it continues, the daylight continues to grow until we reach the most northern point, depending on where you are on the planet, where you will experience a solstice again, right? Where you have the longest day and the shortest night. And that process continues again because it shifts directions, and then the days begin to shorten, the nights lengthen, and we have equal day and equal night. That is a pulse and a rhythm that we experience on a regular basis. So, with navigating eternity, the essence of this medicine and how you want to apply it is recognizing that that process is speaking to an energetic expression on the planet that you can actually align yourself with. And if you start to schedule and plan according to that flow and that frequency, you experience more energetic support. So, one of the things that's really important about navigating eternity as a medicine is it's not simply about managing our time and our energy, right? It's about a deeper spiritual process that is taking place on the planet right now. What is woven into this medicine is actually very deep, powerful, spiritual, esoteric knowledge, right? Occult knowledge, as they would call it. This is ancestral wisdom and prophecies that were carved into stone, that are painted on papyri, right, or papyrus to this day. And the expression of this particular experience that we express in navigating eternity, when we say, you're on this ship, you are the vessel, and you are navigating the oceans of eternity, we're putting you as the center of the solar bark or the boat of Ra, the boat of the sun. And ancestrally, the way we depict it is this, is that the bolt of the sun or the solar bark traveled through the 12 hours of the night, which we call the duat or the tuat. And that expression is what many people have interpreted as the underworld. It's the unconscious realm, or it is the dark age. It's a multidimensional expression of everything that we perceive as darkness, right? And as we orient ourselves back into the truth, we recognize that the darkness is not what we've been programmed into thinking. The darkness is not the evil and the void. The darkness is the infinite potential of everything that exists and doesn't exist. It is literally the essence of everything. It is the chaos that gives purpose for there to even be order, right? It's the cosmos. It's the womb of creation. It's the womb that we all came from, that darkness. It's the womb of the earth that we have to put the seeds into in order for them to decay within that darkness, germinate and sprout and give us life and vegetation and vitality on this planet. That darkness is the essence of what we're moving through when we say we're moving through eternity. It's the unconscious realm. But what happens with the bolt of Ra is the light of the sun brings light and consciousness through that darkness in order to birth a new day, right? So what we recognize is that Ra, or the sun, is the ultimate expression of inspiration and liberation that we have, because every day we can count on that sunrise. And every night, Ra goes to battle with the entities of the underworld in order to come back and be birthed again on the eastern horizon each day. So this is something that we go in depth in navigating eternity. So when you go in, when you join navigating eternity or join the JED, you'll have the opportunity to go through Tehutimat Academy and go through the course and actually learn about some of these different elements of the medicine, especially for those who already are on their spiritual journey and their spiritual awakening. This is going to amplify this year. This revolution is all about the spiritual awakening of the planet that's happening right now. There are different waves, there are different stages that people are in, and ultimately, the deeper you go, the more you're able to uncover. And you have eternity. That's the essence of the medicine,
Okay.
is just recognizing even after this life, you have eternity. But it's not about putting things off. It's about allowing yourself to have ease and grace with yourself so that you can allow yourself to unfold and become without the pressure of time. Because the idea that we have a limited amount of time actually prevents us from birthing within that darkness the infinite potential that we have. right? So I love to always reference Nana Amos Wilson. So Dr. Amos Wilson in a lecture once said that it's very important that we heal our relationship to time, because under the pressure of time, our mind actually becomes stifled and unable to actually retrieve information. So it is actually our linear time paradigm, this Greek and Roman time paradigm, this Eurocentric linear time paradigm, that has us in a state of being unable to fully awaken and unlock all that we have within our DNA, all of that wisdom. So that wisdom for us ancestrally was depicted, symbolized by this image of this particular bird, known as the ibis bird or the ibis bird. This bird is Tehuti, right? Tehuti is often seen on the beach, usually in sand. Sometimes I've seen it in rock. And it actually, as it's eating, it looks like it's signing its signature, right? So this became the symbol for the scribe, right? Because Tehuti is the record keeper. There are two different depictions of Tehuti, however. There's another animal that's used to be associated with Tehuti, which is the baboon. This is the more serious, linear aspect of the measured precision of Tehuti, of our intellect and our discipline, that element of accountability, right? If Tehuti is the scribe and keeping the record of everything that ever was or everything that ever will be, then Tehuti has to be on point. And the reason why the baboon was used to symbolize this force or this principle of nature is because the baboon, one, when Ra rises, many different species of baboons, there's so many different types, but particularly the one that was used, our ancestors in Kemet were exposed to, whenever the sun would rise, you can see the baboons actually raising their hands and almost like chanting at Ra as Ra rises on the eastern horizon. Another thing about Tehuti, or this depiction of Tehuti, is that the baboon actually urinates at a measured pace, right? We actually had some ancient artifacts where you would actually put water the same way you would use like an hourglass and flip it over, and after an hour, all of the sand comes down. The 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 vessel would hold the water, and once you filled it, it would actually show the baboon urinating, and after it finished urinating, it marked an hour measure, because that's how precise the baboon actually urinates in nature. So all of this is really powerful, because when you think about the level of connection and observation, like the scientific um, level of connection to nature that you would have to really be able to, you know, think about a principle like this and associate it with these different aspects of nature, to me is a very artistic expression. And that's one of the reasons why in the European interpretations of our ancient tradition, it's minimized, because we spoke in allegory, we spoke in mythology. And that meant that these were stories and symbols that were used cyclically, like they're eternal principles. They don't just happen once. It's not a story, it's a myth, and it's an energy that constantly recycles and returns back, right? So there's a distinction. For example, if you were thinking about a principle like Asar, who is resurrected, right? And thinking about it as a symbol that is speaking on an astrological occurrence and a symbol of something that is constantly happening as we're moving through our solar system. And the expression of the Christ, or the enlightened one, the liberator, comes around many times, many, because the energy is always present and it's always recycling on the planet, versus it being a one-time story, which is why we have so many different expressions across many cultures of these Christ figures, right? So that's just one example. So the reason why that is because Tehuti is actually measuring the growth pattern of the universe, which is a spiral. Everything in the universe is curved. And the aspect of linear time that we have to release or heal is a part of the limitation of our ability to see, right? See beyond that line, right? And actually curve and spiral around in the way that our thoughts do, right? So, one example that I'll just give in this space, just to give you an idea and a practical way to think about what I'm saying, is when we think about time as a linear thing, right? And we think about, for example, Charles Darwin, right? A European ideology around growth is the theory of evolution and that we grow in a linear fashion, right? When you feel like you're supposed to grow and constantly get better because it's linear growth, then you can be very hard on yourself when you have a moment where you're experiencing a downside. So I think it's important to recognize that everything moves in cycles because things go down and they come back around. So when you're experiencing a period where your energy is low or you're not functioning at your best, you don't have to judge yourself so harshly because you can recognize that there's a purpose for that movement and that spiral, right? It's a contraction that gives way for expansion because even when you come back around, you're never at the same place. It's like what Brother Rob said, we can be still and we're still moving, right? So Tehuti is thought and time. And the word thought actually comes from the Greek interpretation of Tehuti, which is called thoth. So this is an expression of how we have to perceive time from an ancient perspective or an indigenous perspective in order to allow ourselves to connect with the way nature wants us to move through time and to recognize that everything moves in cycles. And I wanted to check in with you, Brother Rob, to see if there's anything that came up for you as I'm sharing.
Yeah, yes, yes, absolutely. So thank you so much. I didn't want to interrupt your wisdom there. But I did want to add, because like a lot of us, people of African descent, a lot of us come from a very religious background, like myself included, coming from a Christian background. And so I do want to emphasize the point that this is not about religion. And oftentimes we kind of hear terms like this, or we hear, terms within Kemetic or African spirituality, and we equate that with our reference to Christianity or Islam or Judaism, whatever religious context we come from, and they're really just not in the same space whatsoever. And so really what I want our audience to think about is think about these things in terms of principles rather than like, oh, these are like quote unquote gods or goddesses or some kind of it's not outside of that paradox of kind of the Christianity framework or Western religions. And so it's really what we're talking about here are principles, right? We're really talking about principles. So try to separate that if you can to really get at and understand what Sister Neff is really trying to lay down for us all this evening, and the wisdom in that. So oftentimes we have our religious blinders on and we can't see the principles or the concepts of what we're hearing because the religion blocks that, right? Because we're so used to things coming into us from a religious context. And so, I think that's important to kind of frame that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think it's very important because so many people have been introduced to comedic science from a religious interpretation or from a villainized
Mm-hmm.
interpretation as well.
Right.
And both of those are limiting
Mm-hmm.
because as Brother Rob said, they are principles. These are not gods and goddesses. These are, but that's the way that it's been interpreted,
Right.
mainly by the Europeans that tried to interpret these principles that they couldn't really embody. And what we're talking about, particularly with this medicine, is about you actually embodying the energy. So when we say wisdom and truth, right, Tehuti and Ma'at, we're saying like, what does that? How do you live that? How do you be that? How do you express that in your choices, your decisions, and the way that you actually live your life through your character,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Exactly.
Um, and yeah, they're not deities. These are not external forces. And I think that that
Yeah.
was the most disempowering thing and why the religions were created in that way. And I love
Mm-hmm.
to always quote Baba John Hendrik Clark, who says all religions are um, handmaidens of conquerors. And it's important that we recognize that that is truth, that is a reality, that religions were created and utilized and really became weapons. So it's important for us to recognize, like, as we're connecting with this medicine, it's also healing that element where we can return to spirit and spirituality and our connection to nature and to the divine and our own embodiment of that, right? It is all around us, it is through us, in us, and we can embody these energies. So the next principle that I'm sharing is ma'at. So I said ma'at is truth, right? And there's two images on the left hand side of the judgment scene, what's known as the judgment scene of ma'at, where the heart of the querent, right, or the deceased, is weighed on the scales of ma'at. And the scale that you see on the top and the bottom, both have on the right side a feather of an ostrich. And that feather of the ostrich was considered to be the feather of truth. So the heart was being weighed to see if the heart was lighter than the feather, to see if the heart was found wanting, to see if the heart was heavy, if the heart was out of integrity. And what's really important about this principle and looking at this symbol is the fact that Ma'at is a moral inventory. And when your heart is weighed on the scale, it is you who knows. All of these principles are faculties of yourself that we were depicting. My elder and spiritual father, Baba Heru, who actually is the one who does the introduction in the Navigating Eternity course to Kemetic science, one of the things that he would always describe to me personally when he was introducing me to some of these different scenes was that even the judges that are depicted at the top, they're not here in this image, they're all faculties of yourself, aspects of yourself that are judging yourself. Right? So when you see the priest with the mask of a excuse me, not a falcon, the mask of a jackal, right? It's symbolizing the principle of discernment, because the jackal, just like most not, well, felines, yes, but dogs that we know today, right? They they have a keen sense of smell. And that keen sense of smell was depicting discernment, right? And good judgment. And it goes into a lot more depth than that, but like all of these principles, just like you see the priest that's wearing the mask of the ibis bird or the ibis bird, the tehuti, right? Recognizing that he is keeping a record of everything, that every deed that was ever done is then accounted for. That's what's happening at the judgment scene. When something is complete, the record is then rolled out. So every choice that we make, every decision that we make, the way that we use our energy, it matters, right? So this is also why this is very important with this medicine. Now, the bird, the ostrich, why that feather? I always thought was very interesting because the ostrich is the largest bird on our planet, and it doesn't fly, which is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
The largest bird on our planet, and it doesn't fly. And there's so many interesting things about the ostrich, but this is the beautiful thing about this medicine is, and why I respect my spiritual father, Baba Heru, because he would always take us to the source. It wasn't like you have to go to an intermediary. So you don't have to take my word for it. You could go on YouTube and watch a documentary about the ostrich, and you can see the symbolism, you can see the behavior of the ostrich and connect with that for yourself. You can look at the symbols and you can interpret them for yourself, right? It helps to have that guidance, but really, this is about awakening your own intuition and your own inner knowing. So the way that I mentioned that Tehuti was thought, right? Ma'at is centering. Ma'at is wholeness. Ma'at is symmetry, right? Is the both sides when they're whole and they come together and they do that dance, right? So Ma'at represents justice. It represents reciprocity, right? Giving and receiving in equal measure. All of the aspects of the polar energy when they're balanced. So that is what the centerpiece of all of this is, right? You're navigating eternity, and the guiding principle are these cosmic forces. Tehuti is universal law, and Ma'at is cosmic order. And everything that is happening above is also happening below. That is an African proverb that really is the essence of this medicine. So when we talk about these different cycles that we're moving through, or earlier I mentioned that Tehuti or Mercury was retrograding, what's happening in the cosmos is having an impact down here. And how do we interpret that and understand that and connect with that in a way that actually guides us to organize our lives in alignment with nature and the natural cycles? So I wanted to just check in with Brother Rob and just see if there's anything that you want to add in before we continue on.
Yes, Sister Navia, thank you so much. And so one of the things that came up for me, and this is something you always tell us, to travel light, right? To travel light, and I'm reminded of that because as you mentioned the ostrich feather, and obviously the story goes that the judgment scene is that our hearts are weighed against that ostrich feather, right? And and it's something that always stuck with me because I feel like in general in our society we carry so much weight with us, right? Whether it's just stress, whether it's trauma, whether it's depression, whether it's just dealing with daily life. I mean, it's just so many things that we are generally carrying with us. And we can be good, moral people, but we are carrying a lot of burdens and just junk that we just need to just offload, just get rid of, And so I'm reminded of that because just even in my own, meditation time recently, I felt a sense of like play, I felt a sense of like, almost playing with the divine in a sense that it should be very light, and I think so oftentimes when we come before, whether we're meditating, prayer, whatever our spiritual practice is, right? We come to it with a very, very serious, very, very, very serious. And sometimes that's good, right? But at other times, maybe not so serious, right? Maybe it needs to be a playful attitude. I know, for parents, right? You're not always serious with your kids. Sometimes you're playing, right? You play with your kids
Mm-hmm.
too. And so we need to kind of have that similar relationship with the divine, in a spiritual sense. And so the concept of just being light, and just as we walk throughout our day, just think about what that means to you, right? To travel light, to walk lightly, gently, right? Not to carry additional burdens, right? That we don't have to hold on to. And that's really what navigating turning is all about.
Yeah, I love that you added that part because being lighthearted, like
Yeah.
like think about what we think of when we say that.
Yeah.
To be lighthearted and to have joy, right? What happiness, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
just about the struggle. That's also a way that we have to orient ourselves because a lot of us are oriented into looking at the African liberation movement and um, our liberation, our freedom, and this process of revolution as a struggle. And at
Right.
times, it has been a struggle, right? There has been many sacrifices. There's been a lot of bloodshed,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're on our time. That's
That's
what I'm
right.
saying. As of year zero, we've moved into our time. So we're not here to regurgitate what happened before because those sacrifices were made for us to stand up and be where we are right now, where the energy is fully in support of this movement. This is our destiny,
Yeah.
right? Our liberation is our destiny. And at this point in the process, it is our joy, right? It is the light that becomes the guiding principle for us to be able to move forward, not the struggle and the density, the
Mm-hmm.
heaviness and the darkness. That's actually what we've just moved through. And
Right.
depending on where you are, there are people who are different in different stages because everything is going to have to become undone and dissolve, right? That dissolution process in order for it to come back together in the proper way, right? And that's a process that's happening, and people are coming into this process at different stages. This medicine is designed to take you through that transformation process, right? But ultimately to come into the light, right? To come into a new day, a new dawn.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that, Brother Rob. I also, I want to shout out, I didn't mention, if you are here with us live, please tap into the chat. Um, we'd love to answer any questions that you have. I'm just going to acknowledge a few comments. So I just want to shout out Sister Regine that's here. And then I did see a comment here that I want to speak on specifically. Respectfully, those European conquerors that you're referring to are also our ancestors. Yes, respectfully, I do acknowledge that, particularly myself, being from Cabo Verde, which was colonized by the Portuguese. One of the things that I spoke on very thoroughly, if you were following our channel for Tehuti Ma'at, which is Tehuti Ma'at World on YouTube, you may have seen our sexual alchemy series where we talked extensively about the specifics of the transatlantic trafficking of enslaved Africans and what happened, particularly here in Cabo Verde, as one of the departing points. Even after our people, our ancestors were taken from Goree Island, or all of the different places that people commonly know as departures from the continent, they still had to come to Cabo Verde to be traded because the Portuguese were the ones who initiated the slave trade. So I recognize that, just as Malcolm X has said, right? I also have European ancestry. Most of us do. Most of us on the planet today are hybrids. And it's important for us, yes, to recognize that these are our ancestors, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that way of being is correct for us right now. So what we have to do is have discernment within that. We're not throwing out the proverbial baby with the bathwater. Navigating eternity is about being on time and beyond time.
That's right.
So we still honor and recognize, like, this is a linear expression, or excuse me, a finite expression on this planet. We do die, right? Our bodies die and decompose. However, we see that in a continuum, because that ending is also a beginning. And that's part of us reclaiming our African ancestry and reclaiming our cosmic inheritance, right? Our cosmic consciousness, which is that everything continues, right? We're only here right now. Eternity is the connection between the past, the present, and the future, right? So we're creating tomorrow right now. And everything that could ever happen is happening right now in the essence of eternity. So those are things that we don't necessarily get from European culture, right? African culture, one of the things that's very that's actually villainized by most Western religions is ancestral veneration. But that's really because of that cosmic consciousness and us recognizing that my ancestors are here right now. They're with me, right? Because everything is happening in eternity. So if my ancestors are in my blood, and my ancestors are present within me, that means that there's a spiritual essence that I can honor within that. And that's not worshiping my ancestors, right? It's honoring the fact that I'm a continuation of my ancestors. The same way I can honor my future children, right? We can honor generations to come by living a dignified reality and making choices that are going to be supportive of those future generations. So I just wanted to speak on that, because it's not an either or situation. This is about holding both. But we are moving out of that European paradigm. And that is the reality of what nature is showing, right? The planet is literally going through a purging and healing process that is expressing that directly. So I do think that it's important for people to recognize we're not, it's not an anti thing. It's a expression of progression, right? We are completing and closing out that cycle of the Greco-Roman dominion of the planet. And we're returning back to our proper place as the original mothers and fathers of the planet, right? So I just wanted to address that. And then continue on, because I actually want to share the medicine with you before we close out, just some aspects of it that, regardless if you feel connected with our community and you want to tap in and actually answer the call to join Tehuti Ma'at this season and see if this is actually in alignment with you, and book a clarity call so we can see if this is right for you, because we're here not just For ourselves, this is a instrument of service, right? So if you are here for the love of African people and you're here because you recognize that what is in your heart that you feel to create with your life, you know, is connected to a collective um, responsibility that you sense, then, you know, we want to call you and welcome you in. However, this medicine is universal. It's for anyone to apply. So there's aspects of it that are just here to have you actively participate in creating your reality. It's as simple as that. Moving out of a reactionary state into a responsible state of connection with nature, right? So that's what I mean when I say like being conscious of what's happening and aligning with it intentionally, which is the word that Brother Rob used. It's about the intent. So one of the keys to this medicine or this system is the lunar cycle. So the same way that we talked about the solar cycle and we talked about the progression between um, the equinoxes, right, where we move into solstices and then the equinox, our moon cycle as a reflection of the sun, reflecting the sun's light, also experiences this process, right? It's a cyclical process where we start a new moon, right? So we just started a new moon on the 29th of March. So we're in that new moon cycle, which is about to peak, right? The moon is waxing and it's about to culminate into a full moon on Saturday, if you're here in real time. And then it's going to wane back down into a new moon cycle that begins on the 27th of April. So that pulse is actually a guide for our energy. If you schedule and align things in alignment with the energy, you will feel that sense of ease versus feeling like you're swimming upstream, right? So, what do I mean by that? New moons are for initiations, beginnings, and starting points. Does that mean that's the only time that you can start something? No, but it's the optimal time. It's the most, when you'll feel the most supported in a new beginning. Why? The sun is not going to be illuminating, right? Because of that synchronicity between our planet, the moon, and the sun, there isn't going to be a reflection of the sun's light. So there's darkness in the sky. And we talked about earlier that darkness is just like what you need whenever you sow a seed into the ground, right? I'm going into my farmer bag. Every seed that you sow must die, right? It has to go into the darkness so that it can actually decay. That's why it needs the moisture. We water it, we allow the seed to germinate, and then it sprouts. So the new moon in that darkness, right? That cover of night is when you have the optimal energy for infinite potential. So that's when you want to sow your seeds and when you want to start things. Then, as the moon waxes, it starts to expand. And that's more of when you want to express, right? And move outward. So, a great way that you could use this energy, like for example, in farming, what we do during the waxing moons and into the full moon, we do anything that's like weeding, right? Uprooting, right? Pulling things out because the energy is in support of pulling, right? The same way the moon affects the tides, right? And the waters, it also affects the tides and the current of our body, which is majority water. So, water spiritually symbolizes the emotions in our emotional realm. So, that's important to think about because sometimes we, you know, our emotions don't feel supported, right? We might want to do something, but maybe emotionally we don't feel like it, right? So it just helps to feel more responsible and more in alignment, right? Where you do the thing that you have to do if you actually feel like doing it. So this is why you want to align with the cycles. The full moon is the climax, it's the peak, it's the most radiant. This is when, if you're doing something, you're presenting, like full moons are the best time, right? We're doing our Navigating Eternity right now, this webinar supported by the waxing moon. It's about to be a full moon. So then you have a waning moon. Once it reaches its full peak illumination, you get the most clarity of that cycle, whatever the theme, whatever you're meant to gain from that cycle begins to wane in and you start to absorb. This is where you can integrate and process. It's kind of contracting you inward. It's a more meditative inward state. So you might want to schedule more of those those tasks and items that are actually allowing you to be present more internally, right? So that's a way that you could think about how you could practically use the natural cycles and systems. You could think about it on a seasonal basis, same way that we talked about, right? Summertime, you know what the vibe is in the summertime, right? The energy is coming out, right? Long days, short nights, right? So all of that is speaking to energy that you can align and schedule your life according to or in synchronization with. And I want to shout out our brother Travis. Welcome, Travis. I'm glad you're here. And also our brother John Perkinson.
Yeah. Hey,
So,
John, what's up? I think John's one of our guys.
okay, that's great. Well, welcome. Glad to have y'all here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, or any comments. Travis has also been a part of Navigating Eternity. So, is there anything that you want to share about that? How do you like work or consider the lunar cycles? Is there anything like as you became like more conscious of it that you could share with people who may like, for them maybe they're
Mhm.
like, I don't even know what.
Yep. Yep. No, no, I got you. I got you. Absolutely. So here's my thing, right? So like I think one of the challenges for me when I first kind of came into navigating eternity was because I don't come from like a I'm not really I don't know anything about like astrology. I know nothing about like I'm learning about ancient Kemet, right? But I don't know, I don't have nearly the depth of knowledge that Sister Neff does, right? And so sometimes for a lot of us, it can be overwhelming, right? With learning new terms, new terminology, the lunar cycles and all these kind of things. So my whole thing is like, don't let that stuff overwhelm you, right? And so my approach is really just to do the one thing, right? So for me, is having a daily spiritual practice, right? And so for me, primarily that involves some form of meditation, some kind of journaling, and prayer, primarily, right? And so within that, right, if the moon happens to be a full moon, then maybe I get more clarity. And so for me, it's been almost like by happenstance, right? Of course, it's great if you can kind of align it and that sort of thing. But for me, it's like if I'm doing it every day, then the alignment will fall into place because I'm doing it every day. I have a consistent practice, and so because again, I'm not in, I don't know the astrology and all these, a lot of these things, and I'm learning, but at the same time, I'm not sure if I'll ever get to the point where I can explain it really that well.
Yeah,
So
and that may not be, what you have to do. And that's the
yeah,
beautiful thing about the other aspect that we tend to go into. So so this could be for someone who completely has no clue about astrology or astronomy,
yeah,
and it could also be for your most seasoned astrologer, because if you are familiar with a natal chart, right, you may know that everybody comes in with a different star print. That's what I like to call it. You have a different design. Everyone has a unique divine design that they're here to express, right? So for some of us, we're here to be more grounded and connected with the earth, right? And the planet and this grounded reality. So there's all different expressions. So there's no wrong way to navigate eternity. So I do appreciate what you shared though, because another aspect of navigating eternity, the helm, which is where you're actually holding your steering wheel, we do consider like the main rhythm to be each day, right? Our circadian rhythm. Whether we're male or female, we both have a circadian rhythm that is actually regulating the chemistry of our bodies, right? Our sleep cycles, right? How our body produces melatonin, and literally the whole chemistry that's functioning, that's creating the function of every major system in our body, right? Our metabolism, all of it. And that's based on our body's ability to regulate itself in relation to the sun. So, getting out in the rising and being able to take in that light that is expressed in the sky, like through the reflection that we sense of the sun in the rising, or in the evening when the sun is going to rest in the west, right? So at sunset and sunrise, these are peak times that your body chemistry can actually adjust itself. So that part of navigating eternity is also important because it's a microcycle. For those of us who have wombs, we also have an infradian rhythm, right? So our menstrual cycle is also
Oh, I don't know if we lost her. Yeah, sometimes the internet cuts out. Are you still there, sister? So I can't speak to that cycle, but I'll try to hold it down. Speaking again, just in terms of finding how you can make it apply for yourself, And so again, we're not trying to change your whole set of how you're navigating your life right now. I think a lot of us, we think about time management as far as how productive can we be, what can we do in a certain amount of time, right? But this is really just how do we practice within in community in a spiritual sense, right? And so that was the thing. Just again, speaking on a personal level, like that's what I have obtained mainly from this is just that connection to community. And so, sorry, Sister Neff, I couldn't pick the ball up where you left it off. I can't speak to that side, but I was just kind of sharing my experience within community as well. And I'll pick that thought back up, but I want to let you finish your thought as well.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that for those of us with wombs, we also have another aspect that governs our body chemistry, and that's our infradian rhythm, which is based on our menstrual cycle. So, but I would love for you to complete wherever you were
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, like I was just kind of following up with just the concept, right? Kind of having a daily practice, right? Whatever that practice looks like for you. And it may be different each day, right? It may not be the same kind of thing, but it's a spiritual practice. And there is an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, right, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And so then, and we haven't got to this portion yet, but Sister Neff will talk a little bit more about the Jed. But the aspect of spiritual practice is good, and most of you probably, if you're listening this far into the webinar, you probably have some kind of spiritual practice, or at least have thought about it. For those of you all that are on the Ijikadi African martial arts side, you should know that African spirituality is interwoven into the martial arts and always has been. And it's a lot different than what you might see in Asian martial arts, where there's kind of the Zen, the Buddhism, and things like that. It's not really in the same space, but it is interwoven within our many of our practices. It is a lifestyle, it is an experience that we live every day. And so this idea of practicing, is really, for me, it's been more of an attunement, right? Attuning myself to the divine, because the world tends to kind of crowd a lot of that, and then you get heavy and you're not traveling light anymore, like we discussed. But doing that within community is really is where you will see that shift, right? Because I've been doing this for a while now, just on my own, but not within community. But then once I got within community, once I got plugged in and once I got connected, that's really where things started to manifest and change substantially within my personal life. And it's kind of spilled out into, what I do in the community and what I'm doing, now online. So I just wanted to finish that thought, sister. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, we're definitely going to talk about that element of the medicine. We're not going to go deep into each aspect of the medicine today. I am going to take you through what we are equipping you with as you navigate eternity. Um, and we'll talk about the JED. So, just to go through briefly, big aspect of navigating eternity is rest, right? You have to make space to rest, to relax. That's the other thing. We're not machines. That's why we're saying, like, it's not just this linear thing. Like, we do have cycles. We have to allow ourselves to rest, just like even the sun rests. Technically, it doesn't, but in our perception, right, we're seeing that it's not constant daylight. We also have night because it allows us to value the daylight, and the daylight allows us to value the night, right? So there's this aspect of that ebb and flow that is important to recognize. So same way that we're in activity, we also need to be in rest. And what you're actually doing in navigating eternity is, right, you're navigating this vessel, and as Brother Rob said, you're part of this fleet. That's what being part of the community is, right? It's one thing when you're just out in the open sea and a storm comes, right, and tears that ship apart. And at least if you got, a few homies that's rolling with you, you can get on someone else's boat, right? Sometimes that's really what we need, right? It's not just about lifting each other to accountability, it's also about just being. I think that that's another element of navigating eternity that I've heard the most positive feed forward on, is that people have been able to experience, like, it's not just about being in practice always. Sometimes it's just about being, because sometimes we could do all the right things and then it just becomes robotic and we're not even present in the being, right? Like, even the prayer becomes something that people can become disconnected from because it's just regurgitated, right? So it's like part of the being and being present and then actually speaking that prayer from the heart, right? Like overflowing with that gratitude from a place of presence. So your map is essentially what's guiding you. It's where we ask you the legacy that you're leading. And we place you in the context of eternity through the cycles of time, through continuity, truth, reciprocity, and integrity, right? All of the principles that we talked about of Tehuti Ma'at, so that your map is eternal. It's not framed within a snapshot of what someone has enclosed you into, right? It expands you beyond what the programming has placed you in and allows you to actually retrieve your soul's vision for your life and beyond, right? So that's part of the process and what we do, create those tools. But ultimately, you take that map and you're on that ship, right? You're in those waters navigating eternity. And there's time for everything. So we really do a lot of reminding around that, right? Just remembering that, yes, we're in time and we still have eternity. So just how it is relieving to be able to recognize that you can do all of the things that you're here to do, and there's a rhythm and a rhyme to how that can get done, right? So part of what we do is we create an itinerary, right? So on that map, it's just like you want to travel the globe, but you're not going to go everywhere at the same time. So we create an itinerary. And these are the intentions that you focus on for the revolution that we're all a part of. So you do it on an annual basis, which is the revolutionary plans, and you also do it on a seasonal basis, which is on each season has 3 moon cycles, right? Or 3 months. So for the spring, it's April, May, and June. So the commitment for navigating eternity is seasonal. So we open the door in April for people to enter in, and April, May, and June, we are navigating the oceans of eternity together as a fleet, right? Of warriors. And a big part of what we do together is also review, right? We do that together collectively because we're checking in on being accountable and having a record of what it is that we're saying we want for our lives and how we're actually embodying it. So part of that is just being able to reflect and being able to look at the ways that you are growing and the ways that you are accomplishing your mission. So we do a lot of orienting into that, where we can be more intentional about looking at the areas and the ways that we want to grow in our lives. We do this through a process that adapts to the changes that are happening in your life, which is really important. Not being like so linear and rigid and stuck on a plan. This system is not just about having a plan. There are energies that we move through where it doesn't support planning, right? And you really have to be in surrender to the energy and being present. So it's also about that as well. So being able to adapt and learn from yourself. And then we create a compass. So the compass guides you every moon cycle, and it's what gives you direction, right? And we went into this a little more deeply in the previous webinar that we did, which we did workshop style. So if you are interested in going into it, we did teach how you could create your own compass to navigate this moon cycle. So if that's something that you're interested in on the Tehutima YouTube, you can go to the previous webinar and watch the recording for that. So I just wanted to share that with you so that if you want to actually see how to apply it, we went more in depth to what are the mechanics of the compass. What is it that you need to create within your compass? How do you look at your life and the different roles that you have, your personal development? So you can check that out, right? Because this is about you filling your own tank, right? Filling your own tank is not just about being selfish, but it's about self-preservation, right? And looking at the need for you to prioritize yourself so that you can overflow into others, right? I don't know if you could speak on any of that, Brother Rob, because I know that that's a theme that we've talked about a lot. How as people who are here as spiritual warriors who want to see a different reality and are here genuinely on a soul level, we feel called to transform the planet. We're here with that service energy, but sometimes we can lose ourselves in service. So I was wondering if you wanted to speak on that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of experience with that. And I'm sure we all do if you're in this kind of work, right? You got a lot of experience with that. But yeah, so for me, about a year ago, we launched Ijikadi African Martial Arts. And so locally here in my area in Portsmouth, Virginia. And so we're teaching the youth, and it was phenomenal, right? I'm going to different events and different, trade shows and different cultural events throughout my local area, and just I was everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Like, so every month there was something else going on, and I was there, right? And it was good. It was met a lot of great people, but you do kind of burn yourself out, teaching the youth, and which was phenomenal. And really, I just wanted to just that's the future, right? And so what we're talking about this evening is not just, yes, we want to change our own individual lives. Yeah, okay, yeah, absolutely, and be, more culturally rooted and conscious, and all these kind of things are great. All the benefits are great, but what we're talking about is how do we do this on a generational level, right? So we're planning and talking about terms of navigating eternity. We're not just talking about doing this in our own lifetime, but we're talking about, how do we make an impact through your individual life that lasts 400, 500, 600 years from now? So 600 years from now, I want folks to remember this moment. I want folks to remember this webinar. I want folks to remember navigating eternity, right? And to still be implementing it, right? And applying the principles to it, right? And so it's really about how do we build something that lasts beyond our own individual lifetimes. And so I just encourage the audience to really get with Sister Neff, set up that clarity call. If you're not sure what to do or anything else, just at the very least, set up a clarity call to get more information and to see how it can apply to you in your own individual life. Because I'll tell you that from my perspective, I just couldn't find a community of like-minded people. And I'll tell you, if you've been trying to do things on your own for a long time, and as a guy, as a black male, like that's the majority of us, because a lot of us don't have a deep bench of of support network, right? And so if you don't have that, and it could be anybody, male or female, but you definitely want to plug in, because it makes a huge difference when you start connecting with others who are like-minded, who can support you in your growth and in your goals, and just the energy that comes from that. And for me personally, it's been phenomenal. The different things that I've seen that we've been able to do over the last few years. So,
Yeah. And I would say Brother Rob's one of my star students.
oh,
No, I sincerely mean that. So yes, I put on the in the chat as well as on the screen the Calendly for Tehutimat, where you could book your clarity call if you want to get more information. We just got to make sure, right, the chemistry is right and this is a right match, because it's not just about pulling in, everybody into this space. We want to make sure that we're able to offer you what it is that you need. And if this isn't the space for you as well, then we'll direct you to, different tools and medicines that we have that we feel will be supportive of you. But we really want to call in the Tehutima is really designed for high level souls who are here for this particular mission, right? So I if you're feeling it in your heart, then this is for you, right? And the Jed is going to take off. This fleet is going to take the sea on the 13th, which is, yeah, Sunday. So we have a few more slots, and then anyone else who wants to join, who is in alignment, because it has to be intimate communities. Our JEDs are small groups, 11 people max. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Then you'll still get access to Tehutimad Academy, to the Navigating Eternity course. You can still go through self-paced. You'll be able to get access to the live Q&As that we do every month, so April, May, and June. And then you'll come in the summer session when we start in July. So you can still participate, even if the slots that we have fill up. But the most important thing is book your clarity call via the link in the Calendly first and foremost, right? So typically we always say take your time, right? So recognize if this isn't the moment for you for whatever reason, we're navigating eternity. There'll be another opportunity if this aligns with you. It could be a not right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's really important that you recognize that the essence of the medicine is about taking your time, being patient, being present, being intentional, right? So the flow and how it all connects is you evaluate your previous cycle always, right? Because you're in a continuum. You check your map to make sure you're in alignment with what's in integrity and what the cosmic guidance is for your own life, right? On a soul level, right? Wherever stage you are in it, which is why this is an eternal process. Your map is always revolving. You calibrate your compass, which is going to guide you on your ship as you're navigating, plan your route, and always allow leeway, because sometimes there's storms, right? And sometimes you can't control the wind and the water. And you got to give yourself that grace and that leeway. And that's also what the JED is for and how we support each other. You're going to celebrate all your wins. That's a very important thing that we encourage and that we're going to celebrate with you. And we want to take things to completion. So it's not about just getting it done, it's about the efficacy, right? So sometimes we talk about energy management, we think a lot about efficiency, and we're thinking about, yes, maximizing on our energy and our compatibility, and also efficacy. What is the intent, and are we accomplishing the purpose, right? So we're inviting you to join our fleet, right? The JED is the space where you're going to come together with like-minded and like-hearted spirits who are here to amplify your assets, right? So whatever you have to offer, there's also going to be other people that are here with you, right? I always put Queen Queen Latifah on the screen because I love that song that she has. It goes UNITY. If you never heard of it, go watch it. Find it on YouTube and watch it. But this is all about building UNITY, unity. So if you're not looking for accountability and other people to make sure that they lift you to your highest potential, and people that are also multi-passionate and powerful beings on this planet who are world leaders, this might not be for you, because this is for people who are here who want to rise up to the next level in alignment with others. And as Brother Rob said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But also, it might be harder, but you will be stronger, because sometimes it's hard for us to see those mirrors and have to really contend with the reflections of ourselves that we have to experience when we're in group settings. So that's not for everyone. The reality is we're going to call you to come in full presence and bring all your energy. This is not one of those spaces that just say that. Like, we really mean it. We need you to come full and be authentic and be true. And that's what it's all about. We're going to identify what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, where are your opportunities. And we're also going to share our strengths and our resources and or resources, as we like to say, and our opportunities that we can share with you, right? So this is about joining the Tehutima militia, The militia is an organized force that's raised from the ranks of the people to be of support, service, or protection. And if that stimulates you and that sounds and feels like exactly what you need and exactly what you want, I want you to go ahead and book that clarity call so you can find out about the investment for joining Navigating Eternity, getting access to the online course and our accountability community. And so the JED is going to take place every other Sunday, but you also get access to the galaxy rank of Tehuti Ma'at. So you get access to all of the other aspects of the instrument. You get to observe, and once you graduate, you can actually become a builder and contributor in our space. So, is there anything that you want to share, Brother Rob, before
Yeah,
we close?
yeah, real quick. So just for specifically for my audience, for those that are on the Ijikite African martial arts, so included in the offerings, right? If you do sign up, is our warrior classes that we do every week, every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time to 10 p.m. Eastern time. So that's included. Okay, so we do offer it separately, but it's included with the militia membership as well. So I do want to make sure I put that out there as well for those that are interested in learning African-centered martial arts, combative, self-defense, those type of things.
Yes. Shout out to all our warriors out there. So, Brother Rob does lead our warrior class every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So, you will get access to that. You'll get access to our Intuit healing ciphers every moon cycle. So, every month, first Saturday, we'll have our healing cipher, which is a space intentionally there for healing. And the clarity call will answer, and you'll get all the details of everything else that comes along with it. The commitment for the community agreement for the JED is that you show up. It's for one season, April, May, and June. 6 group coaching sessions where we're going to be in accountability. You're actually going to apply and implement and integrate the medicine. This season, we're taking it a little more deep, where we're going to make sure that we're making space to actually be in the medicine more together. You'll also have access to the course. Each of our sessions, twice a month, so every other Sunday, are 90 minutes. And we're going to focus on being action oriented and aligning with our collective values. So, if you want more information about that, you can also go to tehutimaat.org and visit our About page and find out more about what our community values are, what our 11 pillars are, and you'll get access to the Navigating Eternity curriculum. So, if any of this sounds like exactly what you want and exactly what you need, we invite you to join us and book your clarity call so that we can figure out the next step for you. All right. I want to thank you, Brother Rob, for welcoming Tehuti Ma'at and Navigating Eternity, this webinar, to your platform, and for your presence and everything that you've created within our universe that has added to our beautiful instrument in the way that you are embodying it. So we appreciate you and your service and everything that you've offered and continue to offer. And we hope to see some of you on the inside.
That's right.
All right. Thank you for being here and have a beautiful rest of your night. Power.
Power.